Welcome to In Solidarity, a Seva Cooperative Federation podcast. Seva Cooperative Federation has been working for over 30 years to economically empower women in the informal sector through worker-owned cooperatives and collective enterprises. To put it quite simply, we work as a women's enterprise support system to promote and strengthen grassroots women's enterprises. Through this series of podcasts, we hope to cover themes that are of importance to informal women workers and their cooperatives and collective enterprises, and how we can create an enabling environment for women's enterprises to thrive.
अभी तो बहुत बड़ा सपना है हमारा।
मुझे कामनी बहुत जरूरत है, मैंने ले जाओ।
अब हम लोग के पास कैपिटल आ गया, अब हम लोग खुल के करेंगे बिजनेस।
સમયમાં તો જોવા જઈએ તો આપણે બધો કામમાં જ સમય જાય છે, પોતાના માટે સમય કાઢવો બહુ મુશ્કેલ હોય છે।
अभी हम लोग मतलब ये पैसा राउंड होते होते हम लोग 12-13 लाख का बिजनेस चल रहा है।
You've tuned in to In Solidarity, a Seva Cooperative Federation podcast. The recent global health crisis, the impending climate crisis, global economic instability, and recession highlights the loopholes in our existing understanding of the economy and the current development paradigm. Yet, what is the alternative? On April 18th, 2023, the United Nations General Assembly adopted the resolution promoting the social and solidarity economy for sustainable development. What is the social and solidarity economy, and can we understand it better? The conversation around the social and solidarity economy started way back in the 1920s when the International Labour Organization set up its Cooperatives Unit and created a document on the enterprises in the solidarity economy. In 1937, Philippe Allais, a Spanish writer and translator, member of the League of Human Rights, used the solidarity economy as an economic organizing concept and advocated for the development of economic solidarity among worker collectives in urban and rural areas during the Spanish Civil War. It was in 2009 at the ILO Regional Conference on Social Economy, Africa's response to the global crises, that the social and solidarity economy was defined for the very first time. In 2022, the 110th International Labour Conference adopted a resolution around decent work and the social and solidarity economy, with the definition of the social and solidarity economy that is widely accepted today. To better explain the social and solidarity economy, the role of the International Labour Organization, and why it is the best alternative, we have with us today Simel Esim. Simel is a political economist who heads the Cooperatives Unit at the International Labour Organization. Since 2012, Simel has led ILO's work on cooperatives and the wider social and solidarity economy based in Geneva. In this capacity, she has collaborated closely with WIGO, SEVA, and the other global membership-based organizations on research, capacity development, advocacy, and awareness raising on the role of SSE entities in advancing informal workers' rights. Simel was the technical lead at the 110th International Labour Conference that led to the adoption of a resolution on decent work and the social and solidarity economy, and the subsequent 7-year strategy and action plan endorsed by the ILO's governing body. Simel is currently a member of the International Advisory Committee of WIGO's Organization and Representation Program and represents the development constituency on the WIGO board along with Lynn Lim. Welcome to In Solidarity, Simel. I am delighted that I get to have this conversation with you.
Thank you for having me.
And just to I'm going to jump straight in to the questions. I think it would be nice to spend some time just decoding the social and solidarity economy for the benefit of our listeners. So just to start that off, could you define for us very simply what the social and solidarity economy means and what is its history? Where did it originate from?
Thank you, Priya. There is now an universal official definition of the social and solidarity economy. It comes from the 100 10th International Labor Conference in 2022. And this definition is also included in the United Nations General Assembly resolution on promoting the social and solidarity economy for sustainable development that was just adopted, in fact, on April 18, 2023, just a couple of weeks ago. And according to this definition, the social and solidarity economy encompasses entities that are engaged in economic, social, and environmental activities to serve the collective and or general interest. And they are based on the principles of, and this is very important, that these are value and principle driven entities, that they are based on principles of voluntary cooperation and mutual aid, democratic and participatory governance. Again, this is a very important one, autonomy and independence, and the primacy of people and social purpose over capital in how the surpluses, profits, assets are distributed and used. So these are the principles, and the idea is that these entities put into practice a set of values that are intrinsic to their functioning and consistent with care for people and planet, equality and fairness, interdependence, self-governance, transparency and accountability, and the attainment of decent work and livelihoods. I would say, all our countries around the world have these solidaristic, mutualistic initiatives, in harvest times, in rural, settings, or in, crisis times when communities come together. So they have existed for, across time. The fact that we are moving toward this framework is, yes, of course, more recent, and it is to be able to show that whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. And if we can create a conducive environment for all these entities together, whether this is about policy or financing or support services, legal assistance, and accompaniment, then we can actually improve on their contributions to sustainable development.
Thank you for that, Simel. And I think, like you said, these kind of structures in various countries have existed over a period of time. But I'm interested to know, what made the International Labour Organization start working on it, and when? When did the ILO start thinking about the social and solidarity economy?
Look, the ILO has had a cooperatives unit since 1920, and this unit has been around for 130 years without a break. We still have here a small but committed team working out of Geneva, and its ILO is the only part of the United Nations system with an explicit mandate on cooperatives. These activities are guided by an international labor standard on cooperatives, the ILO promotion of cooperatives recommendation from 2002. And this recommendation emphasizes that a balanced society necessitates the existence of strong public and private sectors, as well as a strong cooperative, mutual, and other social and non governmental sectors. And more than 117 countries use this recommendation to reform their legislation and policies. And I would say, because ILO is a normative institution, we need to look at the international labor standards and the resolutions to track the development of the references to social and solidarity economy. The first mention, in fact, goes as far back as 1922. But it's really, let's say, in the past 20, 25 years, a quarter of a century, that we see more and more these emphasis. For instance, the ILO Declaration on Social Justice for a Fair Globalization, which is from 2008, and this recognizes a strong social economy as critical to sustainable economic development and employment opportunities. Then coming to 2013, the ILO co founded the United Nations Task Force interagency task force on the social and solidarity economy with 17 UN agencies, the OECD as members, and 14 civil society organizations and research institutes as observers. Something very familiar, of course, with our SEWA WeGo colleagues is the transition from the informal to the formal economy recommendation of the ILO, which is number 204 from year 2015. And this acknowledges again cooperatives and social and solidarity economy units as a means to facilitate the transition to the formal economy while recognizing they may operate in the informal, or the members and its users may be very much operating in the informal economy. Two or three more recent recommendations. The Employment and Decent Work for Peace and Resilience recommendation, number 205 from 2017, recognizes the role of cooperatives and other social and solidarity economy initiatives in enabling recovery and building resilience. And we see this very important now in times of forced displacement around the world, where the SSE entities, community based initiatives are critical to complement other public and private initiatives. The ILO Centenary Declaration on Future Work that was adopted in 2019 also acknowledges the role of the SSE, and more recently, the Human Centered Recovery, the global call to action from COVID-19 crisis. That's from 2021, recognizes again the role of the SSE for a broad-based, job-rich recovery with decent work opportunities for all. So it's been the research has been going on, the programmatic work, the response to our constituents has been going on across the years, but these are important normative benchmarks that show the commitment of the ILO and its members, meaning governments, workers' organizations, and employers' organizations, to recognize the role of the SSE for decent work and sustainable development.
Tell us a little bit about the social and solidarity economy and decent work. How does the SSE contribute to decent work and sustainable economies, Simel?
I mentioned the 110th International Labour Conference and the resolution that was adopted on decent work and the social and solidarity economy. And this resolution notes that the social and solidarity economy entities can create and preserve jobs, provide social protection, as well as a range of services for their members, workers, users, and communities. So the work of the ILO on this portfolio promotes the establishment and development of strong and resilient social and solidarity economy entities as a means of achieving decent work, while considering, of course, the diverse realities and needs of the members. This may include the degrees of development of the social and solidarity economy, the fundamental principles and rights at work, and how these, what's the state of these at the level of the country. And of course, we use a lot the other relevant international labor standards and human rights. SSC entities first generate direct and indirect employment. Jobs are generated directly inside cooperatives, mutuals, associations. They are also generated and maintained through the goods and services that social and solidarity economy entities provide in various sectors. And this could be from food production to housing to child and elderly care, the financial services. And the social and solidarity economy can also generate jobs as a result of the spillover effects with the dynamism created in the local economy. They have a role, of course, to also play in a national social protection systems by facilitating access to social protection for their members. Social economy units, particularly cooperatives, mutuals, can facilitate the access to social protection through awareness raising, collective registration campaigns, collective agreements, and they can also play a role in facilitating access to public social security schemes for self-employed workers in different sectors, artists, taxi drivers, craftspeople, even now more and more digital labor platform. And also, I think, and you know this very well from SEWA, in addition to facilitating social security coverage, coverage, organizing into cooperatives can also improve legal recognition, enhance economic efficiency and security, and provide a basis for access to finance. So these are also in the informal economy, like SSE entities like co-ops, self-help groups, mutuals can help tackle workers' rights deficits related to forced labor, child labor, discrimination, and working with social partners. Also, social economy units can support informal economy workers in improving their working conditions and increasing their incomes. In the rural economy, they can promote decent work, including in the agro-food sector. Strong, independent, effective organizations of rural employers, workers like co-ops and producer organizations can enable rural communities to influence and enhance their economic and social development, negotiate, influence other public-private actors. So these are some of the ways we see the social and solidarity economy influencing, let's say, decent, contributing to decent work.
I'm quickly going to take you to something that Geeta Ben, an artisan at the Abodhana Handicraft Cooperative, says.
મારું નામ ગીતાબેન અશોકભાઈ સોલંકી છું હું અમરાવાડીથી આવું છું.
During COVID, most people could not go out, but our cooperative was working, and so I continued to get a livelihood. Raw materials were purchased and delivered by the cooperative, and I made masks from home. We're a family of 6. While everyone else in my family lost their jobs, my work ensured that we survived. Simel, the pandemic was devastating, especially for women in the informal economy, many of whom lost jobs. And in a research that we did around COVID, it showed that 71% of women workers who were part of cooperatives said that they were supported by their cooperatives.
I really appreciated the SAVOR research that you mentioned in your question, and I think it was very valuable research. And I commend you on that. Historically, during periods of crisis, the value of cooperation, solidarity, mutualism experienced an increase in popularity, a surge in popularity. It's also during such times that there is an increase in membership and turnover of cooperatives and other SSE entities. People flock to them because they are accessible and they see they fill the gaps. This was the case, for instance, during the 2001 and 2 Argentinian crisis, in the aftermath of the 2007-8 global financial crisis, and even in the Greek debt crisis in 2017. And as you noted, during COVID, it was the same, and other public health crises. For instance, during epidemics like AIDS, or in the relief and reconstruction efforts after national disasters, or in the post-conflict settings, these community-based, principle value-based initiatives that are driven by their members, users, communities' needs have really either emerged or became even stronger. In the context of COVID, cooperatives and the wider social and solidarity economy have mobilized to provide relief for their workers, members, communities, change their activities to be able to provide much needed goods or services. And I think this has not gone unnoticed. Local and national governments have started to see the value and started to integrate cooperatives and wider SSE entities into public relief strategies as partners, as beneficiaries. And I think what's important is that it's not all these, resolutions, etc., strategies. There are regional now strategic action plans for the European Union. There is one coming up for African Union, and we very much hope that there will be one for Asia and the Pacific, as well as the Americas. But there's been these also regional strategies in addition to these global, resolutions. And what's, I think, important is that yes, there's recognition of the social and solidarity economy after crises, but it should be understood beyond crises, a role beyond crises, for resilience building and for concrete contributions to sustainable development. And the space is made for them to contribute in the best way possible.
I think through this conversation, it has become quite evident that cooperatives are an important pillar of the social and solidarity economy. But according to you, what is the role of women's cooperatives in particular in the SSE ecosystem and in creating sustainable economies?
Women's participation, of course, in cooperatives is often motivated by the desire to improve their access to income, employment, beyond, individual livelihoods, entrepreneurships. And these entities like cooperatives can contribute to women's economic participation, providing a structure, allows for pooling of resources that produce and market goods and services, and it can be also facilitated through affordable and accessible services like housing, finance, and care services. Women can also gain some collective voice and negotiation power in cooperatives with public authorities and private sector institutions. And that whole practice of, I think, economic democracy, being in a space of economic democracy, can really allow women to engage in decision making and power sharing. There's also opportunities for education and training of their members, not only on improving their income as or their livelihoods, but other areas like skills train leadership building, or addressing issues such as gender-based violence. Women who are engaged in cooperatives then may be better positioned to address personal and communal needs such as freedom from violence or environmental protection, climate crisis that affects their lives directly. So these are some of the reasons. And of course, women can join existing cooperatives, agricultural, financial, and other. But in many countries, especially where there is very strong divisions, gender divisions of labor, um, women's voices may or may not be heard. The household as headship, traditions may not allow for them to even, be considered as members. So having these separate spaces, their own unique spaces, can really be a powerful platform. Doesn't mean they need to stay only women. They may decide to engage with other colleagues, men from the communities, or they may decide to join existing, corporates which may have uh, more men members. But this is an important, I think, if not an interim strategy, an important empowerment strategy for women.
Simel, since you've worked across the world, um, could you share with us some examples of the social and solidarity economy organizations globally doing work to create decent jobs in both developed and developing contexts?
We often, of course, share the Seva experience with our sisters and brothers from around the world. We have brought also, for instance, experiences from Latin America, where there is very strong waste pickers associations and cooperatives there, and partnerships, strong partnerships with local government. For instance, in Latin America, we see that partnership being a very critical in Colombia, in Argentina, in Brazil. So these cooperatives would then create their networks, platforms of group of them, combining associations and cooperatives and self-help groups and the like, and creating a platform that then negotiates, for instance, with the local government for care facilities for their members and these kind of things. I think, one of there is also consortium kind of, in fact, when we are talking about the issue of growth, generating scale for social and solidarity economy is one of the big issues about viability. Yes, you are not no longer one and you're 50
Right.
or you're 100, but is that enough? And you may need to be in the thousands or in the 10,000s. And there is different strategies for scaling up. There is horizontal growth, which is typically setting up these networks, franchises, subsidiaries, platforms, and then collaborating with partnering with local governments, research institutions, cooperative or other development banks, training institutions. So creating that kind of economy of scale to then be able to reach out to other institutions and request business incubation. There is also the vertical growth, which involves setting up secondary and tertiary structures
Right.
of unions, federations, confederations, which can provide services from education to financing to policy advocacy. And what I would then call is a third type of growth, and that's a transversal growth. And here I mean infusing social and solidarity economy values into the local economy. So
Right.
it's not just about you as co-op or other social and solidarity economy entities, but everybody else is somehow aware of this across the enterprise spectrum, the public and private sector spectrum, and everybody is somehow working toward in different degrees toward these values and principles. And this here, what we need is the establishment of a regional or district level ecosystem of solidarism, of mutualism. The one example is the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy. This is in the northeast of Italy, and another one is the Basque country in Spain, where we have seen such transversal group. For instance, Emilia-Romagna, the Italian one, has one of the densest cooperative economies
Wow.
in that local economy. 2 out of every 3 people are cooperative members in
Oh,
Emilia
wow.
Romagna, and they contribute 30% to the gross domestic product of Emilia Romagna. So it's not just a co op movement, but it's like a part of a network ecosystem. And this has key advantages because they can really use all these different growth strategies, the horizontal, the vertical, the transversal, and really work with the support institutions. And of course, a critical, challenge for social and solidarity economy growth is to ensure continued proximity and responsiveness to the needs of your members, workers, users, and communities in alignment with social and solidarity economy values and principles. Because there's a risk when you become too big, you have 30,000, 100,000 members as one cooperative or
Right.
one, association, you may lose the connection, or your members may and your communities may no longer remember as generations, let's say, pass those values and principles that brought you together. I think, again, not trying to grow one cooperative or one social enterprise or producer company big, but really looking into how to replicate, how to then create support system for you to access and stay viable and connected is really key. I would like to give one sectoral example here. For instance, social cooperatives. Again, this is something quite prominent in Italy. They produce goods of social utility like educational services for children, adolescents, families, immigrants, asylum seekers, and integrating disadvantaged people into employment, whether these are people who learning disabilities, difficulties, or addictions, or have gone in and out of the prison system, or have been long-term unemployed. And this model has really been inspiring for many countries. They have set up laws to allow for the growth of social cooperatives. But then, in many contexts, you may be operating social cooperatives without necessarily calling them a social, cooperative, or having the legal framework for a social cooperative. And in the case of these social cooperatives, they use a consortium model, like a child care cooperative will come together in, let's say, a given city, Italy, let's say Torino, Turin, and they will come together 5 or 10 of these cooperatives in a given district or neighborhood and bid for local government calls for procurement of care services. So, and they have a priority. When the local government is reviewing the responses to the call for procurement, they will prioritize the cooperative model because of its redistributive nature, because of its local ownership and control by its members, which are then the family. So it creates a multi-stakeholder kind of approach. And then there's the whole idea how to then, let's say for these childcare cooperatives, how do you bring the food? Bring it from agricultural cooperatives. When agricultural cooperatives are, producing and they are going to sell, make sure that the consumer cooperatives in a given district setting are buying or prioritizing purchasing from these agricultural cooperatives. So there is then this, which is a principle of cooperatives and cooperation, principle 6 on cooperation among cooperatives. And you are creating this co-op to co-op trade or co-op to co-op collaboration and creating this, cooperative ecosystem.
At a previous event, you talked about Brightly, a domestic worker cooperative based in the US. Could you tell us a little more about them and how they work?
There are now maybe a half a dozen of these worker owned domestic worker cooperatives, which started with incubation by a community based organization in the US to help mainly migrant domestic workers, to manage their businesses, to grow and to create financial sustainability. The community based organization assisted and accompanied them, providing legal advice, leadership training, and fine tune their business model. Yeah, and they are now doing this as a franchise. So that could be also an interesting model for replication.
And that finally brings me to the last question. Tell us a little bit about your work and your journey at the ILO, Simel.
So I've been leading the ILO's work on cooperatives and the wider social and solidarity economy for the last 11 years. I head the co-op unit, but I'm also the vice chair of the UN task force, the interagency task force on the social and solidarity economy. I started as a young student activist, women's movement, violence against women. And then this brought me to do a degree in feminist economics. And then I worked with the International Center for Research on Women. And then I was recruited by the ILO in Arab states as women workers' rights to work on women workers' rights and gender equality in the world of work. I was there based in Beirut for 8 years, working in the occupied Palestinian territory, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, working a lot with migrant domestic workers, conducting research on gender equality in the informal economy, what are entry points. And this is where, seeing how cooperatives can be a great instrument for women's economic empowerment, but the kind of support needed to strengthen them. Oftentimes, women instinctively know the value of coming together, but then once you set up a co-op, what are its, tax implications? What are its, governance challenges? How do you do, general assemblies and financial reporting and these kind of things? So I started working on these issues, and also the value of statistics, being able to show proof of the contribution. Though I've been doing a lot of work around that, including, getting international guidelines on statistics of cooperatives, and now we are moving towards something similar on wider social and solidarity economy statistics. And these last two resolutions, the ILC resolution, has been, of course, a very important, I think, achievement. Gender equality, informal economy are very strongly, social justice, social dialogue, labor rights are very strongly articulated in both the ILO and the social and the UN resolutions. And I've been with WIGO, Women in Formal Economy Globalizing Organizing, since 1997. Last year, I was elected to its board. Before, I was on different committees working on the Middle East, North Africa region, and the learning from SEVA, the inspiration from SEVA, the dual strategy of SEVA, both trade unionism and cooperativism, the vision of Elaban, have been my inspiration.
Thank you so much for making the time to speak with us, Simel, and sharing your experience and your insights around the social and solidarity economy. This was a wonderful conversation, and thank you so much for having it with me.
Thank you so much for reaching to me. I'm very grateful and honored to be a part of this wonderful podcast series. I've been listening and sharing and encouraging others to listen in as well. Great initiative. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, Simel. If you enjoyed listening to this conversation, do share it with your friends and family. If you would like to collaborate or partner with us or get in touch with our women's cooperatives, write to us at communications@sevafederation.org. That is communications@SEWAFEDERATION.org. We'll be back with another guest and another episode. Until then, stay tuned to In Solidarity.